Viewer contributions make local programming possible on WNIN. Become a member of WNIN with your contribution so we can continue to make this programming available. Visit WNIN.org and click on the donate button.
Welcome to our second show in October. As you can see, Patrick's not with me. He's in timeout for his incorrigible behavior last show. So we're honored this evening to have Professor Matt Hanka from USI and Professor Robert Dion from the University of Evansville. Gentlemen, good to have you.
Glad to be here. Thank you very much.
All right. By the way, my comment, Pat, was all in jest. He's not in any trouble. We'll welcome him back in November. A lot going on.
Yes, sir.
Let's first of all start with just yesterday, the president, we're taping this on a Tuesday. Monday, the president went to the Middle East and announced peace in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. The return of the hostages that he had, for the first time in 500 years, been instrumental in bringing peace to the Middle East. And he should get some credit for that. My question to you, gentlemen, is will this have a lasting impact on his political powers, and will result in some changes or some impact domestically?
Well, I think it's clear that he personally does not like violence and doesn't like to see war last long. And so he's made a really strong effort to try to bring about a change there. And this is a success. This is something to be celebrated. The fact that the killing has stopped for the most part is something to be celebrated. Now, is this going to spill over into his domestic agenda or the esteem that the American people have for him? Even will there be lasting peace in the Middle East? That's a tall order. But boy, in the moment, let's all celebrate something that really we've waited for a long time.
Yeah, Dr. Dion's right. I think a lot of the things that he's talked about with respect to the region, you see him promoting a Gaza, redeveloped Gaza on the shores, or a Gaza Riviera, if you will. So.
The Trump Hotel, maybe.
A Trump Hotel. So I think there could be some personal interest in this. But Dr. Dion's right. This is a victory of a war that, in many ways, I think this is a good victory for him to try to clamp down a lot of the sort of reactionary of Netanyahu, and who's not very popular. And he's, of course, I think, indicted on war crimes in some countries.
He's not very popular in his own country.
Yeah, and so for him to kind of get him to the table and to have this. We'll see how lasting it is. But yeah, in terms of this being in the news, I could see this if he wants to push that agenda of a Gaza Riviera.
Trump is more popular in Israel today than he is in the United States.
True.
That's probably true, yeah.
And Mike Pence, of course. Mike Pence was very helpful in moving the embassy to Jerusalem, and that was a very big deal in that first term. So Trump is very popular these days on the world stage, and is finally getting the kind of recognition that I think he would like as a respected world leader.
Following the Charlie Kirk assassination, there were comments all over social media and in the media and in the entertainment world. One of the hosts of a late night show even was put on the bench, temporarily it turned out to be, because of pressure from the Trump administration. And there's been pressure on those that put out negative comments about Charlie Kirk. Do we still have our First Amendment?
Absolutely. It's been there in black and white since 1791. We haven't always been very good about enforcing it in the same way. Anytime we feel insecure during wartime, for example, civil liberties are often the first to go. But I think we have a robust First Amendment. We've got John Roberts on the Supreme Court, and he's a free speech absolutist. It can be rough if you and your neighbor disagree about something, and man, social media these days allows a lot of anonymous folks to lob things at you and say bad things about you. But boy, when push comes to shove, there is a right to be obnoxious and to say things that are wrong-headed.
Right, be stupid. Right?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's something to celebrate.
Let me ask you this, though. There's a school corporation not too far from us who terminated a teacher's contract based upon a comment they made on social media regarding the Charlie Kirk situation. That's government addressing content.
It's a fine line because we do have these First Amendment rights, but then you have a responsibility to the position that you have, and you have to be very delicate how you're doing it. So there's probably a lot of people who have stayed away and kept their mouth shut with responding to some of these issues, knowing that they have their First Amendment rights. They just don't want to wade into having any of their words or phrases be parsed apart or misconstrued, that it puts them in that position they don't want to be in.
In a tenuous situation has a chilling effect, does it not?
It does, because it quells dissent, it quells proper, healthy civil discourse, that people are not going to be willing to go out on a limb and talk about the things they want to talk about, even if they feel they're coming at it from a very centered, deliberate, rational, objective standpoint. People are, and that's not healthy for the whole scope of democracy, when people are going to be, walking on eggshells and tiptoes and trying to make sure that they don't get in trouble with who they are, because if they have a job or a livelihood or occupation, that's their livelihood. They don't want to see that.
The Attorney General of the state of Indiana has even put it out there. He wants to know if any government employee is putting negative things regarding the Charlie Kirk assassination in social media. He wants to know who they are, what they said.
Yeah.
Why would he want to know that?
Well, in following the model of the Chinese Communist Party, where you rat out your teachers and your parents and send them away to camps, it's this idea of trying to put a chilling effect on free speech. It's not. Let's just say that our Attorney General is kind of on the fringe of the idea of the way the First Amendment needs to be enforced. I'm on the board of the ACLU, so
I'm sure that he's a card-carrying member.
Oh, yeah. We see each other at chapter meetings all the time. What Matt was talking about was this idea that in the schools, if you're a public employee, there is an angle where it becomes disruptive. And so you don't want it to get in the way of people being able to attend classes and learn things. And for heaven's sake, if you're teaching long division, you don't have to talk about Charlie Kirk. If you're teaching French language verbs, you don't have to talk about politics every day. But if it's relevant, then for heaven's sake, you ought to be able to freely discuss it and learn together. And that's the American way, I think.
All right. The numbers just came out for the state of Indiana. This first quarter, the revenue for the state has exceeded what was collected in 24. September exceeded what was collected in 24 as well. Right. And yet we have these austere budgets. It's affected the local government. We've had a cut in property taxes. Now this true data is getting out there, which is contrary to the projections. How do you think the public will react to that?
I defer to our public administrator.
They're not going to, the public doesn't want to see large surpluses when money can go towards public goods. They don't want to see that. There's a lot of these pressing issues that Indiana's legislative leaders they're framing it in a way that when we talk about this value proposition of government intervention or any kind of public sector sort of work, they're minimizing that. And so the rhetoric comes out is this is just not something that government needs to be in the business. They do not need to support all these programs and spend all of this money. And the public who benefit from whatever social service, social safety nets, they can't live in that kind of environment. And Indiana crows a lot about its surpluses. I know it helped when we had the COVID, the pandemic, but it's upsetting. I recall, maybe Dr. Dion knows, that the Indiana Chamber leader essentially had a talk or gave a speech about the housing crisis in Indiana. Not necessarily affordable, but just, can we have a good enough competitive housing stock? And legislative leaders essentially said this is not something that the legislature needs to involve itself in. When you're essentially saying the Chamber of Commerce wants the state to intervene and take action on something that's very important in keeping jobs and keeping ourselves competitive, we're staying on the sideline. There's something ideological and philosophical about our leaders who want to keep this limited government interventionist role a little too much.
Here's the thing that's happening in Indiana. Correct me if I'm wrong. The state seems to be pushing down what are state responsibilities to the local governments.
Right.
For example, this cut in property taxes has caused the city of Evansville to adopt a wheel tax. The only way they can, and for two reasons. First of all, if they want to use any state money to help on repairing the roads, they have to have a wheel tax. At the end of the day, the only way that the city can repair its roads, keep them up to appropriate standards and keep them safe, is to impose the wheel tax. Isn't the public going to eventually rebel towards that kind of approach?
It sure looks that way, yeah. I'm reminded in the 1980s, Ronald Reagan came in as president, and he wanted to devolve power to the states, and he handed off a lot of things, but the pushback was always about unfunded mandates. And we're seeing that now replicated at the state level, where stuff is coming out of Indianapolis and dumped on the desk of the mayors, and the mayors are saying, how are we going to pay for all that? Right. So somebody's eventually got to pay for it, and you can't keep passing a hot potato, and you can't claim to be a tax cutter if you're also gutting the government functions.
Government functions, all while we're recording record revenues, as you talked about a minute ago.
Let's move on to another. When we talk about money, people sometimes get bored of that. It's not sexy enough. What about redistricting? They're talking about, the vice president's been here twice to talk to the governor and legislative leaders. They want Indiana to redraw the congressional districts for the state. Is that going to fly?
No, I don't think there's any good that's going to come out of this for Republicans. You know, it's sort of that be careful what you wish for. You know, if they're going to take a look over and they see the abyss down there, they look and see it's not a good move. It's not a wise move. And I think there's a lot of Republicans who privately don't want to see any kind of cession towards moving for that. They've got their healthy majorities and supermajorities. Let's keep it at that.
Republicans are in total control of the state government, so they're in the driver's seat, and it's their decision to make. And the fact that it hasn't happened yet seems to indicate that there is some disagreement within the Republican caucus. And I think it's because it's a bad idea. I mean, everybody knows when you're a child, you know that gerrymandering is a bad thing. You don't jump into it, you avoid it at all costs. Those districts that exist now were drawn by the Republican supermajority after a careful, thoughtful process where they bragged about how they didn't break up county lines and they respected jurisdictions, and they did it by the book. And they have a gigantic supermajority. So the idea that some outside pressure would cause them to blow up a district up in Hammond or to take away representation of the state capital just seems wrong-headed. I'm not sure that it won't happen, though. You know, so by November, it's entirely possible that they'll spring into action and force it through, but it could blow up in their face.
I think it will blow up in their face. Yeah, you're right. Maybe there's not a special session, but then when we get to the next January, it's possible we talk about it. And obviously, all this is a response to the Trump administration's fear that they're going to lose the House majority, the very slim majority they have.
If you zoom out, yeah, this is all motivated by the fact that the Republicans are worried about losing the House nationwide. They have a 3-seat majority right now. But for heaven's sake, if you look at electoral behavior since the 1930s, every midterm that rolls around, the party in power tends to lose about 28 seats. So you can smell, you know, what's about to happen.
Right.
And I don't know that you can squeeze stuff out. They're leaning really hard on the governor of New Hampshire right now, a Republican woman, Kelly Ayotte. They only have 2 seats, for heaven's sake. I mean, how on earth can you gerrymander 2 seats?
New Hampshire has a few people. That's right.
But they're just trying to get scraps from Indiana and New Hampshire and North Carolina just to try to hang on to power. And my thought is they may go to the wall and do that and still end up losing.
And I don't think it's a good idea on the flip side to have Democratic-controlled areas do it too. That's not necessarily going to be a best tactic. No. If Gavin Newsom in California had proposed when this issue was really hot of, oh, hey, well, we'll do it in California, that's not necessarily a good move either.
California was doing it the right way. It had this independent commission.
Yeah.
And he's had this referendum on the ballot to do away with that.
Yeah, and that could be a bad precedent too, because then what you're doing, you're doing it in the middle of the decennial census time period, and so that sets a new precedent that I don't think any of us want.
Yeah.
Both acknowledge in your comments the Republican majority in the General Assembly control the state. Bo Bai has just announced he's going to run for Secretary of State. Is he the leader they've been waiting for, the Democrats, to bring their party back into power?
It's possible because he's taking open. This has to be strategic and planned in the sense that everybody knows that Diego Morales, the current Secretary of State, is vulnerable with a lot of the.
You think so?
In a way, yeah. So they see this as the opening of perhaps taking that seat and then positioning Bo at least to kind of bolster the state Democratic Party. Who knows if this leads into any higher off? I'm sure the ambition's there to want to lead in this, but this helps lift all boats in terms of bolstering Indiana Republican Party, bolstering whatever chances that could happen in 28 and beyond too.
It's symbolic because Bo's dad, his first office he ran for successfully was Secretary of State.
It's a very young man.
40 years ago, 1986. Now, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this, but the Secretary of State nomination is decided at the convention.
Correct.
So you don't have to get primary votes, you just got to get delegates. That's how Diego Morales got it at the convention.
And Beckwith too, yeah.
There is competition among Democrats, so there's more than just Bo Bai, but I have to imagine that his name recognition and his father would be enormously helpful. The other thing is there's no Senate race next year in Indiana, so literally the top of the ticket is the Secretary of State race. There is nothing higher. So this young man could, I think he's still in his 20s, could, with his name and his money.
I think he's 29, same age as my son. He'll be 30 pretty soon here, yeah.
That could be, that he could be on a fast track because this could position Bo Bai for something in 28 or anything else with respect to the National Party at the time.
In the Commonwealth, Andy Bashir is the governor, and it sure helps that he's got the same last name as his dad.
Right.
And Bo Bai is the same idea. So name recognition can be golden.
How does Bashir, and you're from Kentucky,
Right.
how does Bashir run for governor twice successfully and continue to lead that state and get really great polling numbers in a totally red state? How's he do it?
He does it, well, he was able to get into office because of his dad. Dad had been essentially leaving as governor, and he had been lieutenant governor, attorney general before. And so he took that to become attorney general. He was elected. And then just good recognition, goodwill, and the fact that he ran in 2019 against a very unpopular governor who was kind of cut in the Trump claw. At least people kind of saw him as sort of a Kentucky Trump in terms of his bombast and his personality.
He's worse than Kentucky Trump.
In many ways. And so he was able to burnish a lot of those bona fides and credentials and goodwill with the public during the pandemic. And so people... And it's interesting for those out there who have names of Andrew, you go by Andy a lot, and I think that's a good name that you can use on a first name basis. So Governor Bashir has used that, just call me Andy, a very personable, he's got a good sort of a way of connecting with people. He does have the coattails and the background of the Bashir name, and I think he's seeing himself as someone who can bridge and bring this party together. The fact that he is still out there teasing 3 years out from the presidential election, he's not quieting any of that. He's seeing his popularity. He's seeing this, it's kind of, hey, let's take this car out for a spin and do it in ways. And I think the Democratic Party, they're going to obviously be the ones to decide if this is what they see as their future. And with the Democratic Party being such a big tent, it's not going to be an easy thing. There are going to be those who won't want to see a white man leadership in a way that maybe they've had in other cycles.
Also, as Bo's dad has said before, good politics is good government.
That's right.
And he's done a really good job.
Yeah.
Explain this to me. To me, it's so obvious. Andy Bashir, good-looking guy, good-looking little family.
Young, smart, person of faith.
And he's been very successful as governor of the state of Commonwealth, the state of Kentucky. Why the Democrats looking to the Gavin Newsoms out here? He doesn't have a prayer.
Yeah. Bashir has to deal with the Republican legislature. He has to deal with a Republican state. So he's sort of been able to work and compromise and meet people in the middle and do things that are sensible. Whereas in California, the temptation is to go as far as you can out to the fringes. And you see that in states that have one-party control. In some respects, we see that replicated here in Indiana because we've just got too much of one party and not enough competition. There's nobody saying, maybe that's not the best idea. Maybe pumping money into the IEDC and wasting millions on this, that, and the other is not in the best interest of Hoosier taxpayers. So yeah, Beshear, I think, is a model for the kind of national leader either party should be looking for. I wouldn't hold my breath that he gets the nomination of a major party,
right,
but he's certainly welcome to the national conversation.
I mean, I think Dr. Dion's right on that there's going to be a lot that he's going to compete with, a lot of people he's going to compete with. But if there's a way of taking, and this has always affected Indiana, Kentucky Democrats, that they're always tied to the national party and the national brand. Right. If this is a way where he is somebody in the middle, in the center, that can kind of reform the brand or the identity, that's certainly going to help. If not, if there is a Gavin Newsom, which it'd be good money even now, is that another defeat because of just how the Democratic Party has projected itself, as it sold itself in the last couple of elections, as being a party of coastal elites, of highly educated people, instead of where their roots were going all the way back to the New Deal.
I'm sorry to step on you. One thing, I'm teaching a course on women in politics. I don't know who the nominee is going to be, but I'm not convinced that either party is eager to try a woman as the nominee in 2028, and that's a sad comment, but every time a woman gets close to the nomination, that party seems to lose. So between Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris, I'm not sure that they want to roll the dice a third time around.
But then there may be a lot of forces within the party that don't want to be on the sidelines anymore. And I think with the Democratic Party being the brand and a lot of identity politics in play, business as usual of decades ago may not be something that they tolerate, but is it a winning strategy? So you have to figure out a way. If they want to win, they may have to have some kind of adaptation to their thinking.
Yeah. As we're taping this show, the government shut down for day 14. Who's going to be carrying the blame for the shutdown? The Democrats or Republicans, or both?
It's one of those things that when we saw the government shutdowns of the past, especially 30 years ago, it was the party that was in control of Congress, and Newt Gingrich took a lot of the flack because of what needed to be done. Trump has found a way, or at least the Republicans have found a way to put this on the Democrats, to be, you're not doing your part as the opposition to go along with this, and they don't want to have a lot of the things that they want to continue. So they're framing it in a way, ideally, should it be that it's fallen on the Republicans, but then they're doing their best of making sure it's not our fault and it's theirs.
Do you think that the Republicans are successful in putting the blame on the Democrats?
No.
Explain.
I've been watching the polling for 2 weeks, and there's ever so slightly an advantage for the Democrats. I mean, people are unhappy when the government shuts down, and so one of the biggest answers is that both of them are responsible, and that's not wrong. But if you're going to blame anybody, the Republicans are taking a little bit more of the blame than the Democrats right now. It doesn't help that they canceled meetings with the Democrats, that they skipped town and they refused to meet, that they refused to swear in a woman who was elected weeks ago, the newly elected woman in the Arizona special election. They've said that we refuse to negotiate. It's you either take what we passed or keep the government shut down. Somebody's going to blink here before long, and I hope it's not by Thanksgiving, because people are talking about air traffic controllers on Thanksgiving.
And you're missing and I think what I was saying a little bit was kind of, and Dr. Dion's right about a lot of this, it's that there isn't pressure on the Republicans by the base to do anything about it. So it can be framed as kind of, okay, hey, Dems, you do something. So the pressure's not being put on the right, when technically, yes, the poll's saying, okay, yeah, Republicans, you're in charge. Speaker Johnson's, I mean, a lot of things he's saying he's not getting the heat for it like he should.
I have a lot of faith in John Thune, the new Senate
Majority Leader. Yeah,
he's a sensible guy. He knows how to get stuff done, and he's going to work with Schumer. Even if they don't like each other, they're going to talk to each other. And I think what they're going to do, if it were me, if I was guessing, if it were me, I'd say, look, make a promise to the Democrats to schedule a vote on this thing that they want, and then open the government, and then have that vote later. 2 different votes. And if you make that guarantee, Some Democrats are saying we can't accept a guarantee from Thune because all Republicans can't be trusted because Trump changes his mind all the time. But I mean, if you can't accept a senator's word or a leader's word, then we're in a world of trouble. We've got more problems than a government shutdown.
We've got 2 minutes left. In the time we have left, will the MAGA movement remain in place and forceful in 2028 without Donald Trump?
That day's coming, and it's very interesting. I don't know who the heir apparent's going to be. It's not necessarily going to be J.D. Vance, but I have to imagine that the party will evolve and maybe evolve away. And if we only have 2 minutes, I'd like to wish Matt Hanka's wife a happy birthday today.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much. Happy birthday, Annie. Happy birthday. It's possible. It just depends. The loyalty towards Vice President Vance isn't the same as it is towards Trump. It depends on what they want to see coming out of these future. You know, a lot of people are a little unsure of what 28 is going to look like, just from even a setup of an election, what it's all going to look like. If it's something Rand Paul has teased about possibly running, right. If that's the case, then you open it up where that's not quite the same bend of the Republican Party as MAGA, but they'll continue because the MAGA supporters see Trump, not only as they support him, he's a symbol of what they're all been fighting for over these years. That
component of the coalition is not going to go away overnight, no.
Marco Rubio, possibly?
You know, being Secretary of State is a real plum. The fact that he's going to have foreign policy experience, in addition to being a state legislative leader and a U.S. senator from one of the biggest states, and a Cuban American, that's all a plus. That's
possible because we remember earlier in the year we were trying to figure out who was going to be the first to go in the Trump cabinet, and was it RFK Jr., was it Marco Rubio, and you know.
Might be Bondi, we'll see.
Yeah, it might even be Pam Bondi.
She's working on it, that's for sure.
That's right.
In the little time we have left, 2026, who gets control of Congress?
House goes narrowly to the Democrats, Senate remains in Republican control.
Yeah, there's going to be some seats that'll be picked up by the Democrats. That'll be, you know, it won't, I'm not sure it'll be the kind of turnover that is expected in a lot of these midterms, but there's enough. And then he's still going to have those 3 or 4 Republicans that'll be thorns in the backside, like Thomas Massey, et cetera. Yeah.
Both of you, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was good.
It's been a real treat for me. I've always learned when these two gentlemen join us on our program.
Thank you.
Pat will be back in November. He'll be out of timeout and ready to talk to everybody. Take care till then.